Thank you, Kristen, for your musical gifts this morning. You've added so much to our service today. So Charles Darwin is one of our prophets in Unitarian Universalism. It may be strange to think of a scientist or naturalist being a prophet, but we like to claim our Unitarians and lift them up. We're proud of them. Some have thought that Darwin was an atheist, but for most of his life, he struggled to make sense of the existence and role of a divine being. It was evil, not evolution, that really did him in as a devout theist. He couldn't make sense of a God that would permit such evils as slavery. At the end of his life, he almost regretfully admitted to being agnostic. The evidence he put forward proved how creation has and continues to evolve, but he made no claims as he just wasn't sure about how it all began. The legacy he left us was an understanding of how life unfolds, adapts, and evolves amorally, without benevolence or evil, but with a fierce dedication to survival through creativity and responsive adaptation. One can find a sacred beauty and value in that without believing in a supreme being sitting in the director's chair. It is said that change is the only constant. In the parable of the sower, African-American science fiction author Octavia Butler wrote, "All that you touch, you change. All that you change, changes you. The only lasting truth is change." In light of that, adaptation to change may be the only real power that we possess. In our reading this morning, Michael Dowd claims that the universe can be trusted, counted on, to move or change in 5 distinct ways: toward greater diversity, toward greater complexity, toward greater awareness or consciousness, at a greater speed of change, and with greater intimacy with itself, meaning with a deeper felt experience of our oneness with the universe. The overwhelming evidence suggests that we humans are the only species capable of thinking about the evolution of the universe and to be aware of our collective impact on said evolution. We are, as far as we know, the only component of the universe able to look into that telescope and say, wow. That's not to say that we are better morally or otherwise or more important than other species, but being relative newcomers to the scene, we are on the leading edge of that greater diversity, complexity, and awareness. For better or for worse, human beings may be the only species that consciously influences evolution. We are having a profound impact, not just on our own evolution, but on the entire planet through genetic testing and modification, industrialization and carbon emissions, and through domestication and breeding. Collectively, we are contributing to that speed, that diversity and complexity, intimacy and awareness of this evolving universe. Awareness of our human impact is a daunting and awe-inspiring responsibility. Having that ability does not change the fact that we can do very little, if anything at all, as individuals to change the course of evolution. Individually, we can't slow its speed. We can't simplify the complexity of the evolving universe. We can't command greater diversity or expand our collective consciousness. All we, as individuals, can try to do is adapt to the forces of evolution at work within, among, and beyond us. Collectively, however, we have an immense impact. Collectively, through individual connection, we can adapt to the unstoppable forces of evolutionary change. Collectively, we can practice caring about the whole and the individual, to be aware of and hold space in our hearts for the immense and the tiny, the infinite and the intimate. What we can do to adapt to our ever-changing world is to grow our ability to love it and to love each other while we're in it. Please don't hear this as can't we all just get along, or can't we just be nice and find ways to compromise our beliefs. The struggle of being truly compassionate in the world requires your integrity, a clear sense of self that knows and remains committed to your values, to what matters most to you. The world needs you to add your voice to those who are voiceless and to use the power and privilege, whatever it is that you possess, in ways that dismantle systems of oppression. But we are not going to evolve a more peaceful and sustainable world through hate. We're not going to be useful, adaptable, or viable if we are consumed by our efforts to gain the upper hand by demonizing those we disagree with. Adapting to this rapidly, catastrophically, intimately diversifying universe will mean leaning in and listening with empathy to our co-inhabitants. Right about now, you might be picking up on a repeated theme coming from this pulpit. For those keeping track, yes, this is the third week in a row that I'm preaching a variation on the same theme. In fact, if you're really listening, you might recognize that this is the main point of every sermon I preach. This infinite, intricate, and intimate interconnection of all. In other words, we need one another. It may be useful for you to know that I preach to you what I most need to remind myself of. That all of life is relational, and that this isn't about winning. It's about adapting through the transformative power of love. Central to evolutionary theory is the notion of survival of the fittest, which wasn't a phrase Darwin actually originated, but accepted as valid from a summary of his theory by biologist Herbert Spencer. Natural selection is often thought of as a competition between individuals. Those who are most fit will survive and the unfit will perish. But it isn't that simple. Evolution doesn't work exactly that way. Natural selection, which might be more accurately thought of as natural preservation, is about the preservation of genes to be passed on over many, many generations. There are so many factors that contribute to how genes are passed on, including random luck, strength, domination, access to resources, and cooperation. Competition, as it's laid out in the concept of natural selection, is seen as the most primal force of evolution, and we can certainly find ample evidence to support the idea that the strongest, smartest, most ruthless will survive. The idea of natural selection has been twisted and hijacked by racists and anti-Semites to support the lie of white supremacy. It is critical to remain vigilant about the ways science and misrepresented facts can be used to perpetuate devastating harm. We know that competition in nature is not the only driving force, and it may not even be the most primary force for survival. Scientific studies point to cooperation as equally important and possibly even more primary. There are countless examples of cooperative evolution in nature that demonstrate the collective powers contributing to the survival of a species. Bees, wasps, ants, birds, mammals, even trees that drain their nutrients into the soil to pass them on to neighboring trees. All of these adapt and evolve cooperatively. American activist, economic, and social theorist and writer of the book Empathic Civilization, Jeremy Rifkin, speaks about empathy as a primary instinct, more primary than our instinct to compete. He proposes the evolution of the species Homo empathicus. Rifkin says that empathy is soft-wired in us, and only through parenting, schooling, and socialization does that empathy become hardwired. Unfortunately, much of our socialization hardwires secondary drives toward competition and aggression. We see the tragic, sensational effects of violence and war, and we confirm the story that we are hardwired for competition and dominance. But there's an older, more hopeful story that is less often told about our expanding capacity for empathy, for caring and cooperation, for collective empowerment that has moved out from family to clan to tribe to religious affiliation to nation, and now with intention to our evolving planet? Can we take part in our own evolution toward a more empathic, loving, and cooperative species? Rifkin says, when we talk about building an empathic civilization, we're talking about the ability of human beings to show solidarity not only with each other, but with our fellow creatures on this planet. Is it possible that we human beings who are soft-wired for empathic distress to actually extend our empathy to the entire human race as an extended family, and to our fellow creatures as part of our evolutionary family, and to the biosphere as our common community? If it's possible to imagine that, then we may be able to save our species and save our planet, end quote. How many of you were surprised by the results of the impeachment trial this past week? Anyone? Anyone surprised? I'm not going to ask how many enjoyed this process or are happy about the results. Personally, I did not listen to most of the coverage. I found it unhelpful, uninformative, not to mention really aggravating. I've chosen not to pay attention to the impeachment hearings mostly because, quite frankly, I've got more important things to spend time on and energy on, and I suspect you do too. It may have been interesting and engaging to you, and if it was, I mean no disrespect. You are probably a more balanced and healthier person than I am. I don't have the emotional or mental fortitude to hold so much vitriol and remain open to the goodness that I truly believe is a more abundant aspect of life. It's really easy in this moment to feel as though things have never been worse. It is really easy to think it's impossible to move through the morass of intractable crises that we are facing. It's easy to forget how much beauty, joy, and wonder there really is. We can continue to wail and gnash our teeth, bemoan the stupidity of evil of those other people, or we can keep turning toward curiosity, diversity, complexity, attention, and intimacy. We can keep turning toward one another. Again, I am sharing with you the things that are the deep struggles of my heart. I am one of millions of Americans who has found it increasingly difficult to speak to many of those I hold most dear about the things I am most passionate about. I've been unable to talk with half of my family of origin about politics since November 2016. I share this as an aspiration because the survival of our species may just hinge on our ability to adapt to this environment, and I need help. I need help setting my intention by speaking it out loud. Better Angels is a national citizens movement that arose out of the political polarization in the United States after the 2016 election. The purpose is to bring liberals and conservatives together to understand each other beyond the stereotypes. This growing organization builds cooperative alliances and practical communication skills to de-escalate the entrenched political divide. It isn't about changing minds or converting opinions. Again, I'm not saying you should forfeit your principles or beliefs. Let us treasure those. This is about recognizing our common humanity. You can check out Better Angels online by going to better-angels.org. Don't get confused by the Better Angel Society, which has to do with Ken Burns' documentary films. So just to be clear. We're exploring the possibility of hosting some training and gatherings of Better Angels coming up, so stay tuned on that. And if, like me, the mere thought of sitting down with someone from another political party has your heart pounding in your chest and your palms a little sweaty, I invite us to pay close attention to that. Is it possible for us to hold our ethics and our convictions while remaining open and responsive to changes that we don't agree with? The universe can be trusted to continue to evolve and change, to maintain its learning, and to evolve creatively through crisis. To evolve right along with it, creatively, ethically, and lovingly, we need to keep returning to our connections across difference, to know our own story and to listen to others. We can't imagine all the possibilities that might emerge from the interconnected calamities of our time. We can't possibly imagine all the ways in which creative, generative adaptation might take place. But we can practice being open to the possibilities, paying attention to our place in the unfolding cosmos and how to adapt collectively and empathically. Adapting to change is hard for all of us. Remaining open and vulnerable, curious and connected takes much practice. In 2018, the Board of Trustees put forward a survey called Spirit Map, and 100 people in this congregation, over 100 people, responded to it. It's an evaluative tool designed by Unity Church, Unitarian of St. Paul, to help individuals and congregations discover, understand, and celebrate their spiritual strengths and develop opportunities for spiritual growth. One of the interesting things that this survey pointed to is that one of our key opportunities in this congregation, meaning something that we highly value but we don't think we're particularly good at, is adapting when things don't go our way. How can we get better at that? How can we embrace change and grow in our ability to cooperate through it? How can we better adapt to what is and imagine what might be? How will we evolve and adapt to the immense challenges we face and have co-created? I'm not giving up. I'm not giving in. I'm not going to lie down and accept that evolution is going to roll over humanity and that we can't possibly adapt to the realities we face. I'm going to keep believing that creative solutions can emerge from empathy, connection, and cooperation across difference. Evolution is happening every moment. The universe we are at one with is unfolding constantly. As life gets more complex, moving ever faster with greater diversity, we can count on the universal exponential possibility of creative responses. We are part of that. Your love, your connections, your peace, your joy contribute to that creative possibility. We must continue to discover ways to find joy and beauty, connection, and co-creation. We must adapt through our diversity, complexity, intimacy, and attention. Will you join me in committing to that, to finding joy, to finding ways of reaching out across differences, to feel connected from your beautiful, unique self to the whole, beautiful, wonderful, and wounded world? Will you join me? Can I get an amen?
Yes.
Gotta ask you guys, come on.
Yes, we will.
May we adapt and evolve collectively, cooperatively, creatively, and lovingly. May it be so.